And now the first session of today. It's a discussion shared by Sue Atwell, Head of EdTech for JISC, about the potential for AI to disrupt education. And I think disrupt is the key word here. I'm sure you've all heard about risks of plagiarism and universities banning chatbots recently. So I'm really looking forward to hearing this conversation. Remember, do submit those questions, and over to you, Sue.
Hi everybody. So I'm going to start just with a brief introduction. So as you all heard, I'm Sue Atwell from JISC, and I co-lead our National Centre for AI in Tertiary Education. Lovely catchy title, but we set this up about 18 months ago, and for once we did our job right. We got our timing spot on. And our job with the centre is to help and support the FE and HE sector to responsible adoption of AI. And that's, a key word for us. This is about being responsible, taking the ethical approach. So we do that through several routes. We pilot relevant products and then make it easy for our members to procure them. We provide lots of practical advice and guidance, thought leadership, and we have a network of community of interested people that are helping and collaborating with us, particularly around the areas of ChatGPT and the rising concerns. So we are pleased to welcome to the panel today. We have Alistair, when he's here, who will be our HE representative. And then we have Joanna. I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself.
Okay, hello everybody, and hello everybody online. My name's Joanna Campbell. I'm the principal of Dumfries and Galloway College. I have worked in FE for about 25 years, and if I think back to an earlier period of disruption, which is similar to AI, I guess I could compare it to when I was a student and the introduction of the World Wide Web. I'm a board member of JISC, and I've been very aware of the introduction of the National Centre for AI and its evolution over the last 18 months, which Sue referred to there. And also I have been a member of the leadership panel for the AI strategy group, and seen that evolve, the playbook develop and roll out some of the great initiatives in and around that over the last 2 years. I think from an education perspective, it's really good, the work that we've done at Dumfries and Galloway College, and a couple of my colleagues in the audience there. We have adopted the use of ChatGPT, and we also use AI in our admissions, so I'm sure I'll get an opportunity to chat about that later on.
Hello, I'm Ben. I guess I get to be the student voice in this discussion today. I'm a PhD student at Edinburgh. I grew up there. I went to high school. I did my undergrad and my master's, and now I'm doing my PhD there. And I'm a rep for informatics students in our school. And I'm here to sort of talk about the anxieties many students have about what's coming and listen to what everyone else has to say.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a question about what you see as the opportunities for AI in education. And I'll start with Joanna and then go on to Ben to respond.
Yeah, so I think about it in three ways. I think about the opportunities for students, I think about the opportunities for educators, and I think about the opportunities for institutions. So if I start with the students, first of all, I think it allows students to very much have a personalised learning experience. So if you think about adaptive learning systems, a student can study a topic in a particular way. So for example, if let's say they were studying molecular biology or something like that, if there's a particular aspect of that subject that they were struggling with, then by adopting AI systems to run testing or assessments, then it means that they can focus in on the parts of the curriculum that's providing difficulty. And I guess the other element to that is that AI will support the students' well-being from the point of view that it can provide targeted support for those students, and also it allows access to systems and curriculum that perhaps they wouldn't have access to otherwise. So if you think about some of the AI tools that are available in Word, for example, that's very much supporting students who have dyslexia or something similar. From a staff's point of view, the bit that nobody tells you about when you become a teacher is that you spend quite a lot of time doing a lot of administration. Now, nobody likes doing administration, but if we then take the benefits of things like ChatGPT, so one of my staff said to me, Joanne, it's brilliant because I can actually do my lesson plans, and yes, they're not perfect, but it's a starter for 10, so it means that I'm not having to spend an awful lot of time preparing that lesson planning. And also, if you think about using tools that automate the marking, so, you know, for those of you that are educators, I'm sure that you spend an awful lot of time marking. So anything that makes the workflow, the mundane tasks, anything that streamlines those is hugely beneficial. And then from the institution's point of view, I'll give you a wee example of what we've been doing at Dumfries and Galloway College. So we actually use a system, I'll not say the name, not wanting to inadvertently market something, but we use a system in our admissions process, and it's really meant that the admissions team can target queries where you perhaps need more one-to-one support and advice for any student that's wanting to come to college. So what they were finding was that 90% of the queries that they were receiving from any prospective students could be automated. So it might be queries about bursaries, or, you know, when am I going to get my timetable, how many days will it be in a week, that kind of thing. All of that has been automated, and the result of that is the conversion rate for students who are inquiring about courses and those who actually make it into college has greatly improved, and it also means, as I say, the admissions team can you know, really target the support that they give. So, you know, there's lots of great examples. The AI, the National AI Centre has got loads and loads of examples of things like chatbots and how they've been introduced in colleges and universities. So I would just encourage people to look at that. So that's effectively where I see those opportunities. Hello, Alistair.
Ben.
So I'm really excited about these personalised learning systems. I think they'll be very useful for students in high school and university to teach themselves things which they may not have understood the first time in a lecture or in the classroom. The other thing I'm very excited about is sort of formative feedback for large bits of coursework which get submitted. I remember when I was in university, a lecturer might have 100, 200 courseworks to mark, and they might only be able to give a sentence. And if we can have systems which can go through like code and essays and give detailed comments about the entire work to a level that it would just be infeasible for the professors to do, then that would be very useful from a student's point of view.
Thank you. Alistair, welcome.
I'm so sorry. I need a chatbot to tell me how to read the time. I thought it was an 11 o'clock start. I'm so sorry, folks. You're now going to put me on the spot and contradict everything that these guys have said already.
Would you like to briefly introduce yourselves?
Hello, everybody. I'm so sorry. I'm absolutely mortified. I'm Alistair Irons. I'm the Deputy Principal, Deputy Vice-Chancellor at Abertay University. Nice to see you. And again, my apologies. I've been sitting in a room. I've been sitting, you know, on the Teams calls in the room next door. And poor lads walking past going, looking at me, staring at me. I definitely need some sort of artificial intelligence to whack me in the head every now and again. Oh, goodness me.
That may only be a little while off,
Yeah.
but hey, one day. So having looked at the opportunities, I think it's only right now that we move on to the risks. So I'll start the other end and give you a little bit of time, Alistair. So Ben, would you like to...
Yeah, I mean, I think we still don't really know what the risks are. I've heard lots of anxieties from students. I mean, when I checked out this morning from my hotel, there was a young guy across the desk, and he was asking me about ChatGPT and how it was going to impact him, because he didn't know what was happening, but he knew something was happening. And from a student's perspective, I mean, we hear a lot about academic misconduct. We're given a big lecture at the start of the year that what we are allowed to do and we're not allowed to do. And that policy is going to have to change. I remember in sort of the cafes around Edinburgh Uni, I remember going into some of them for lunch and seeing little flyers for essay mills, which, well, they shouldn't be there, but they were. And seeing how those essay mills sort of change their behavior and start using some of this technology is going to be very important to keep track of. And what I fear is what might happen is these large language models being trained on the internet, but they may be fine-tuned on individual curriculums or university courses. And if you're an enterprising individual, you may sell these at a premium for students to use. And yes, firstly, that's a problem because it means it gives another way of people to cheat in exams, well, in coursework, things like that. But also introduces another level of inequality.
Alistair,
What was the question?
the risks.
Risks. So, I mean, it's a real challenge, and we've got to think about what we do at the moment and how we might change things. The risk is that we just keep our heads in the sand and don't do anything. I think there's a real, again, I'm sure colleagues have mentioned it already, real set of positives around using AI in education and changing education to enable more people access and allowing individualisation of learning and the like. The downside, and there are downsides, is making sure that we have the infrastructure, the wherewithal, the training, the experience, the expertise to enable the use of such technologies. We started to mention about inequalities. We need to make sure that everybody has the same opportunity, the same chance. We've already seen with some of the more it's changing every day, but the more recent versions of things like ChatGPT, there's a cost, so that means that students who are able to afford it have an advantage over those that don't. Similarly with access to equipment and the like, so we just have to think at a bigger scale. But from my perspective, the biggest risk is we stick our head in the sand and don't do anything, because there are so many positives, but if we don't change, we don't embrace, and we don't take the opportunity from those positives, then the negatives are going to potentially come to the fore.
Brilliant. Joanna?
Yeah, I would agree what my fellow panellists have said. And in addition to that, I think we need to think about the culture in the organisations, the universities, colleges, schools even, and how we adopt that, because everybody's got different levels of AI maturity, and there's almost those who have and can invest and those who haven't, and those who haven't potentially can miss out on that opportunity. I think also we need to think about, if you think about tools like DALL-E, where potentially, there's copyright implications associated with that, and also the fear element that Ben had described as well there from a student point of view. I mean, essay mills, that's not a new issue. It's how we have the scaffolding in place within each university, college, school, wherever, to be able to spot that, and that's one of the important things as well. So, yeah.
Just following on from that, there's I guess it's another risk is, how many students cheat. Then you get a whole spectrum of data back from very, very few to an awful lot, and it's I'm sure it's somewhere towards the very few. But the concern is as these tools become embedded in things like word processors, that that's showing my age, forgive me, you know what I mean. But students will start to type a sentence and the AI will finish it for them in the same way that we've got autocorrect now, so the next version, the next generation of that. And the student generally thinks that it's their piece of work, but actually when we do the detection bit, you go, wait a minute, that's not all yours. And so that's something we need to be cognizant of.
Very much so. And I'm sorry, I'm, maybe not your traditional chair because I've got an opinion on everything. So feel free to put in. And I think, the advice we've been given at the sector, because I think we are at a kind of crucial point, is that, sticking your head in the sand, this is not going to go away. It's here, it's out in the open world, and it's also going to be used in work. So it's about, if you can do nothing else, spending the time getting to understand and use it. Educators need to be able to understand it. They need to have the conversation about it. They don't necessarily need to make any decisions now, but you feel free to disagree with me, Alistair. But I think, everybody needs to be able to understand how this is working and thinking about it, and thinking about for the future.
I think from my point of view, I feel the most important thing right now is just to be aware of, just at least to try and spot these problems. Yeah. I mean, when the internet came along, we had that introduced so many problems in education as well as other areas, and we're still dealing with some of those problems. So if we can spot these problems as they appear quickly, then at least we can start to do something about it.
Yeah. And that leads me nicely into my next question. You know, the pace of change is so fast. This is the fastest speed of change that I've seen with technology. There's new stuff coming out all the time, you know. I mean, I'm sending newsletters out every week because there's something new to share. So what do you think we can do to help the sector to be prepared, particularly bearing in mind that fast speed of change? And also, as we know, people in the sector don't exactly have tons of time to spare to start with. Joanna.
Yeah, well, I think the work that JISC does on that thought leadership piece is really, really helpful. From a college point of view, we have the College Development Network, and they've been doing a whole host of different initiatives around this, just to try and raise awareness and also to give examples of how people can embed that into the learning and teaching practice. There is a big issue here, and it's about how do we upskill staff and how do we do it in a way that isn't just, you know, an add-on to what is already a really crowded role as educators that they play. You know, we need to look at initial teacher training, but, you know, how far do you go with that? Because ultimately, as soon as you prepare any kind of professional development for staff, it's probably out of date. So it's being able to give them the space and the time to be able to, you know, get to grips with the technology as it evolves, and also be able to embed it into their teaching practice. And the other thing is, we need to listen to the students. We need to listen to, I feel terribly old when I say this, but we need to listen to people like Ben and younger, and hear what they want to use technology for. It'd be quite easy for me to say, well, I think you need this, but actually, you know, and I think sometimes as educators we're a wee bit guilty of, you know, thinking we know what younger people need and want.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's a real opportunity for co-creation here and working with students. There's a couple of bits there to pick up, Sue, so that, you know, following on from the college sector, things like University Scotland are working very well together, you know, and we're all in that same boat, and that's really nice to see. But then UK-wide activities like Advanced HE and CEDA are getting involved as well as JISC. And I can't recall ever seeing quite so many activities being generated as quickly, because this is an obvious shared concern, which is great, because we will get the frameworks, and we'll not nail it down into very, very specific answers. We have a framework that allows for that development to move and becomes, there's a longevity in the policies and the frameworks. And it's important to have that in play. But following on from the using AI in teaching and getting staff to be confident and to use things, play with things, try things out, and change their practice, working with students to enable that. There's also a big piece around the getting AI into the curriculum. So irrespective of the subject matter, whether it's nursing or teaching or history or geography or computer science or basket weaving, whatever it might be, thinking about what AI means for that discipline, so that when people go into employment, they're taking that AI-ness with them, saying, okay, wait a minute, I'm now a nurse. How do I use AI in my practice? What's the professional ramification? And that's across the board. It's not, we can't avoid it. Every discipline is going to have a bit of AI around them. It comes back to the point that you're making about where's the time, and it's a wee bit chicken and egg, and hopefully the AI is going to free up, get rid of all the boring, mundane, and the stuff that you think takes forever. You know, it's great fun marking 150 you know, essays that all say the same thing, but you stick a bot to do that, done. So there's a free weekend, fantastic. But it comes down to things like the job design and how we go about thinking about that, and using that additional time to not fill it with other stuff, I'll put my DVC hat on and I'll fill it all sorts of admin stuff that people don't want to do or don't need to do. But looking at it as free time, so it's development time, so we actually use this opportunity to enhance job satisfaction and the work that folks are doing. So as it goes back, I'm trying to turn the negative into positive. It's a real opportunity.
Ben?
Because things are moving so fast, I think maybe we should, we might need to triage different areas as it progresses in different areas of things like we've seen DALI with arts and Copilot with computer science. I did my undergrad and PhD in computer science. Everyone is now using Copilot for code completion because it works so well. Everyone who's in the real world doing software development is using it as well. So you are just at a disadvantage if you're not using it. And how that interacts with plagiarism rules at schools and universities, that will have to be decided.
That's a good point.
Okay, so I'm going to finish with our final question, so we've got plenty of time for questions from the floor, as we've got quite a few coming in. And I think it's the most interesting question. I'm going to start with Ben. What do you think, what's most exciting from your point of view about these recent developments?
Probably the formative feedback. I remember spending 20 hours, 30 hours on bits of coursework and getting one sentence back from my professor. And it's not because they didn't want to do it, it's because they had hundreds of them to do. And I think that will really change people's sort of attitudes towards the feedback loops which are in universities for teaching us.
Okay, Joanna.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think the thing that excites me is the fact that it's going to completely disrupt the way we approach assessment. So in Scotland, we have a national conversation going on at the moment around the future of education and how we assess education, particularly in schools. And one of the things that I think the result of the introduction of AI is going to do is move us away from, exams.
Oh,
and
God.
Exams are not necessarily, in the college sector, we don't use an awful lot of exams. We're used to using different types of assessment strategies. And therefore, anything that moves us beyond that, the two-dash sprint, two-term dash, whatever they call it, anything that moves us away from that is really, really welcome. So this is actually going to force that even further. Interestingly, a piece of work that I've been involved in looks at different models that exist across the world. And in South Africa, they have developed a system called credential fluency, where they look at how we assess formal and informal learning. And it captures it in a way that doesn't require them to sit exams at the end of each year, but actually looks at a different approach. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not using AI, but that is exactly the potential that this, the opportunity that this could bring.
I'm so pleased to hear you say that, Joanna. That I've mentioned that a few times. I really hope, and it's been one of my hopes for a little while, that this is the accelerator in the same way that COVID was to bring more teaching online, that the incumbents of ChatGPT forces that change in assessment, and makes people think more creatively about assessment and also what they need to assess.
Yeah, and if you think about, society as a whole, so we've got Generation Alpha. Very soon they will be the people that will be looking to come into college, university, and they're a hyper-connected group of individuals. They will expect this from us. They won't probably know what essays are at that point by the time they come into their post-16 education.
To be honest, I did some qualification not very long ago, and do you know what I spent most time on? Having to teach myself to write for 3 hours and think differently, because you have to think differently when you write on paper. Mm-hmm.
That's all really good points, and you mentioned COVID and the changes and the speed of change, which is fantastic. And we pushed through 10 years worth of change in 2 months, which is just amazing. Similarly, this revolution is going to have that same sort of velocity of change. We need to be awful careful not to do the snapback. And there's a little, you mentioned exams, you know, there's a little bit of a voice being aired as saying, oh no, we should go back to exams, that'll sort it all out. And it won't. It's just you know, not the most appropriate way to assess people. That's not unconscious bias, that's bias. I know that's what I'm putting that across. So we need to make sure that we enable assessment to be the right thing. So picking up Joanna's point, so that we are assessing and making a judgment on the appropriate things that we want the students to learn. Picking up on the feedback, you know, having constructive, individualised feedback that is pertinent to the subject, but pertinent to the learner, pertinent to the learner's style, pertinent to where the gaps are, so it goes from feedback to feed forward, and it just enhances that whole learning experience, so that a student, like, you know, you get your one line of feedback and you go, or not even feedback, just comment. So what am I going to do with that? You've just justified the mark that you're giving me. Nobody's learned anything. But if you use it constructively, it becomes a really powerful learning tool. So the next time you ask a student to do an assessment, they go, actually, I know what I have to do. And it might be about the academic activity they've got to do, but also around the expectation and around the development of subject matter.
Yeah, well, I think the speed at which we start introducing these things will be very important. I mean, I have friends who are doing PhDs in natural language processing. They understand these language models a lot better than I do. And they are still urging caution about this, because we still have to deal with issues around the models themselves. They use this fancy word, AI alignment, dealing with the fact that these models do exactly what we tell them, not what we want them to do. We're trying to make sure that they do what we want them to do, which is a very, very difficult problem. But at the same time, we also have to think about the human alignment problem, which is getting people who use this stuff to do what we would like them to do with it, not what they want to do with it. And that's an even harder problem in some cases.
You're so right. Now, there's a can of worms that we've noticed that we're just kind of skirting around and not addressing, but the whole ethics about it, and then you get back to the algorithms and who wrote the algorithms, how were the algorithms constructed, you know, is there a bias in the algorithm, is there, you know, is it old white blokes that are writing it? Is it young white blokes? You know, how do we ensure that equivalence of the algorithm? Are the algorithms potentially taking us down a route that we don't necessarily really want to go?
I think it's crucial that we always ask ourselves the question, just because we can, should we?
And no, that's a really, really good point. But it's then teaching the students, from wee people to you know, like their PhDs, to not take it as a given. It's not a computer says yes. It's a computer's given me this. Now I want to understand it. I want to unpick it. I want to question it. I want to say, why is the computer telling me this? You know, and why is the AI generating this? And that actually enhances this much deeper learning, so that you're looking at developing things like critical analysis, critical review, that questioning attitude, and
that critical thinking is key, you know, and
definitely.
Those critical thinking skills, we don't teach them early enough at the moment. You know, students, people, everybody, we all need to have those skills to assess whether sources are valid, whether we should bring them into our argument or bring them into our life and make decisions based on them. The top questions are about assessments. I'm going to skip over those because I think we've covered that a bit. I've got one here. Is the current models of groups of students arriving at a centre and all learning the same thing increasingly doomed as AI tools get closer to being able to offer the ability to customise individual learning plans and deliver relevant content? And that's from Jamie Stewart. Who wants to come in on that one first?
So Jamie, surely is that not a good thing? So sometimes you might want everybody to do the same thing. You've got, right, here's a format, and we want you all to do that same thing. We want you to work together to solve a problem. But I would argue that it's actually a benefit, understanding the learning needs, the learning requirements, where an individual is in their learning journey, and having the wherewithal to individualise and personalise that learning. It's got to be better than having somebody who's bored because, you know, all the learning's behind where they are, and at the other end, somebody who's really, really struggling because they can't quite get it. And so the speed of learning, the journey that they're going through, is different, and the technology enables that to happen. At primary school, secondary school, college, university, and I think that's a great thing.
I would agree with what you're saying there, but I think the downside to that is that I don't think our education system is set up in such a way that facilitates that. So, for example, we have a 4-year degree. Could you do that degree in 2 years? How would your institution accommodate that? Do you know, we've got, in colleges, we have HNDs, they last 2 years. How would we accommodate somebody doing that in 6 months? I'm not saying it's impossible, but one of the scary areas in all of this is the growth in investment in EdTech. And what we've seen is a lot of commercialisation of education. And if we don't listen to the recipients of that, our customers, and who they are likely to be in the future and what they need, then effectively we will become irrelevant. And that's the thing that we need to constantly work towards, making sure that we're, personalising what the students need and want.
Completely agree. I mean, some students might want to take 2 years doing their HND. They might want 4 years to do their degree. Others might not want to do a whole degree. They just want to do wee bits, and the whole micro-credential piece and how we stack that and accredit that and recognise it, as well as the process of education, if there is such a thing, and the way that we teach, the way that we enable students to learn. You're quite right. There's the back office infrastructure that we need to enable to be agile and flexible, and to allow for all sorts of different things. But then get employers to recognise that there was differences. Sorry.
All right. I'm going to move on to the next question. I'm going to start with Ben. Next question is from Hannah, and it's about inequalities in education, and especially relating to students with financial advantage and disadvantage. They've always existed, but do you think the interest in AI and the rush to prepare the education sector against inequalities will hinder or facilitate?
I mean, I don't think we're going to know until we see problems arising. So it's going to be really important that we find these problems before they become really big. And it's just really, I think it's a bit too early to say what these problems are going to look like.
And I can maybe pick that one up, but, and Ben's quite right, we don't know about the AI piece yet, but, we need to be cognizant of the digital divide, and not everybody has the same opportunity, not everybody has the same access, not everybody has the same skill set, not everybody has the same, facility. I came across this in COVID early on, and some of our students were, really engaged, and then dropping off for a couple of weeks and then re-engaging again. And I'm going, why are you doing that? And they say, well, I've only got access on my mobile phone. I've only got so much data. I've used it up in 2 weeks. I have to wait until the end of the month. So it's either accessing education or eating. And it was just a huge slap in the face, and realise, whoa, wait a minute. We do need to think about what the advances in technology actually mean for everybody. Because there's a chance to have equivalence and equity, but it's not something that's just going to happen. We need to work at it.
Okay. Joanna, can I come in with a new question?
Yeah, on you go.
Trying to hit as many. We've got an awful lot. What advice would you give to colleagues in the education sector who are apprehensive about adopting the use of AI?
Well, I think I'd go back to the comments that I made earlier. And first of all, I should say, I totally get it, because anything new that seems very technical, very complicated, is obviously daunting. I think, going back to the comments I made before about there is a lot of organisations out there to help. So, the National Centre for AI, I'm sure you'll make the link available. In fact, there's colleagues out in the foyer area with some examples, but they can direct you to other institutions. So Bolton College runs a chatbot called Ada, which they have used to support their students. So, that's a phenomenal example. But by going and talking to other people that have or are much further down that journey, they'll be able to, take you step by step through how they've introduced that. The other thing is that, there are lots of different programs that are on just to help people with simple examples or how-tos, if you like, as to how they do that. But I do understand it is quite, a daunting area for people to just step into. In the same way that I spoke about the disruption of the World Wide Web way back in the early 90s, I'm showing my age. But at that time, we faced the same kind of questioning, how are we going to introduce this? What does it mean for us? How is it going to change education? So yeah, it's go out and speak to other people that are, have adopted it.
Okay. Ben, I'm going to come to you with a question about the use of ChatGPT in creativity. So Vishnu Prasad has asked, with the use of ChatGPT for essays and assignments is obviously contentious, but as these tools become better and better, do you think students will lose their flair for creative writing and in general creativity?
I mean, I guess we'll see. I mean, I think we've all been messing around with these tools. My mum is a music teacher, and she teaches academic music, and I think she's noticed a couple of her students trying to use this stuff to do bits of homework. But she's not sure, but she has her suspicions. I mean, right now, these essays don't look very good. It's a lot of waffle. But maybe down the line, they'll allow students to show their flair and things like that. But I don't think we're quite there yet, with at least what we see today. I don't know, next week it might be completely different.
Okay, Alistair, this one's from Jen Robertson. As a practitioner trying to implement AI, specifically RPA, within a HE setting to improve non-academic business processes, I face resistance. How can we ensure that we educate colleagues across the sector?
Well, that's a good question. And I get that resistance. We've looked at how we can use AI to help in recruitment. Our recruitment of students is global. Any time a student from a different time zone in the world wants to talk to somebody, they have to align to our working hours. So we're effectively losing 2/3 of a day to potential students. Utilising technology, then AI frees up that time. So students will get an applicant from China or from Malaysia or from California will ping in a question and they'll get a response any hour of the day, which is just great. I know that universities, both in Scotland and the rest of the UK, who've applied this opportunity have seen their recruitment rates go through the ceiling. Huge, big increases in recruitment. So, that's a simple example. Now, of course, people in recruitment go, well, I'm not getting the chance to talk to them. And there's an education piece, there's an understanding piece. And it goes back to the point we were making earlier about not replacing people, but enabling a different part of the job.
Okay. Joanna, as educators increase their use of AI in helping with the delivery, and the quality and capability of the tools will increase, are they not ultimately making themselves replaceable by that sophisticated software?
Well, I think this is one of the things that we're seeing in the media at the moment. There's all this rhetoric around robots are going to replace human beings. And I think there was a report out yesterday that said 300 million jobs were going to be automated and, they would go. I think it allows educators to focus on the wraparound support that they can provide their students. And one of the things that we see coming out of COVID is, and this isn't a new issue, it's been around, it's always been around, students' mental health and well-being, the issues that are presenting themselves now, especially with the cost of living crisis, are really pronounced, and it's become a real barrier to students progressing in their education. So by automating the parts of the job that none of us like doing, marking, and things like that, then it means that educators can really focus in helping students who are struggling with a particular aspect of their subject, but also supporting them with other elements, pastoral support, that kind of thing. I
think the mental health issue is very interesting. I think maybe one use of AI could be, well, when a student has mental health issues and they need to take time off. I'm thinking about university. Yes, they can rewatch lectures at a later time, but they can't go back and do those tutorials. So if we could somehow give some sort of replacement, which it might not be perfect, but it would at least be something that could help them a lot to get back on track.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ben, might AI supervision make methods like group-based learning more feasible, including peer assessment? And would that escape AI-based cheating?
I mean, I think we can already do sort of group work and teamwork. I mean, I did courses in my undergrad where we built robots with 10 people, and I mean, yeah, some of us didn't get on very well, but we built something in the end, and it worked. But I'm sure there will be opportunities to sort of encourage group work and things like that.
Okay. Who wants to take this one? Do you think Microsoft Copilot will change the face of education?
Depends how it's used, you know, and I mean, one of the things we got to be, and I guess it really underpins all that we're talking about here, is that technology is great, you know, and we can use it and utilize it, but we've got to make sure that we're using the technology for the right reasons, that we're using it to benefit the students' learning, to benefit the teachers, the academics that are teaching, to make sure that the overall quality and standard of the education is improving. If there's something that's a gimmick, I'm not saying that is a gimmick, but it's pointless to use it. It needs to have an underlying pedagogic reason to utilize the technology, and that's the key thing.
I think Copilot is probably my favorite tool so far I've seen. Being a computer scientist, it's been amazing to use it. And what people are talking about now is because the context size of these models has got large enough, we can feed in an entire language, a description of a computer programming language, a description of these libraries, and the idea is that we'll be able to generate tutorials for those libraries, even if nobody has ever read that library before and made a tutorial before. And coding in particular is interesting because in university and in high school, it's often the case that you don't learn coding in the classroom, you learn it at home. So I taught myself to code. Most people in my university year taught themselves to code because the university didn't expect us to learn it during class time. It was something we did on our own. So actually, that in particular is a very interesting area.
I agree.
So, just mentioning libraries there, how do you think AI can help disrupt other aspects of the school system, like the library, which is going through a massive cutback on staff in certain parts of Scotland with the introduction of self-service?
So we actually reduced the number of books that we have in our library. Sharp intake of breath when I say that. Actually, I think we need to think about library services going forward. And, you know, do we need as many books? Do we use more e-resources? But I know I'm not going to be popular for saying that. So I think we should look at the library services anyway, irrespective of AI. But that's just my view.
Well, I'm a traditionalist. I love the smell of books, so you know, I'd like to go and stand in bookshops and libraries and just breathe. And there's something about that environment that I help. You know, I'm showing my age now. It just helps enable learning. But it goes back to what we're using libraries for, and encouraging students to go in and question and broaden their reading. And if it's online, then great. Just the fact that they're doing it. But this is where AI can come in and help. So you know, you're then reading a text and say, well, what about this text? What about that text? What about the different perspective? What about the counter argument to this? What about somebody who's, you know, like questioned this particular piece of writing? So and bringing it to the student. You know, so you know, you see it in all sorts of walks of life. You order a book on a well-known online book ordering place. They'll start to hit you with emails. They'll start to hit you with suggestions. It won't be long until a drone is coming with the book that you want to read before you even thought about reading it. You know, so that if we use that type of thinking in terms of the students' learning, you know, and So they decide, oh, I don't want to read that, I don't want to do that. But so that the skill of reading is still going to be there, I hope. But you know, whether they're still in big shelves or of big buildings that we have to pay for, we'll see.
Okay, I think we've got time for one last question, so all coming on this one if you want to. Whilst there are undoubtedly huge opportunities, it is now well documented that the output from tools like ChatGPT can produce plausible untruths. How do the panel feel this can be addressed? How do they feel we can move away from embedding that plausible untruth as fact?
One of the, as we sort of integrate some of these tools, the thing I'm most worried about is going ahead and replacing decisions made by humans about other humans with decisions made by computers about humans. And that's probably going to be the most difficult part. And it may be that we have to wait a long time before we're comfortable with that happening. But things like formative feedback, where you're not marking students, you're just giving some a more in-depth understanding of some work the student has submitted or something like that, that I think will be much more easy to implement, like maybe not now, but within the next year or so.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to the individual institutions and that, you know, policy framework that they have around how they deal with academic dishonesty. And most universities and colleges, well, all of them probably, all have that policy framework for how they deal with that. So any student that plagiarises, we would deal with that as we would, you know, as a student disciplinary matter, if you like. And equally in colleges, we then have to report instances like that to people like the Scottish Qualifications Authority, who then instigate a malpractice investigation. So we have very clear guidance on how we deal with that. So all we will need to do, all says she, make it sound simple. Of course it's not. If it was that simple, we would have resolved it. But what we need to do is adapt our rules, if you like, to incorporate things like this. And we've got tools like Turnitin, which obviously there's a new version coming out, which they say is 97% effective in being able to detect essays that have been generated through ChatGPT. But, you know, whether that works or not, I have no idea.
I think this is the real opportunity around developing learning. So if whatever the instrument is, the AI engine is, that churns something out, being able to question and question that output, recognise when something is made up, and pick out that hallucination, has got to strengthen that's the students' understanding and being critical about what it is. So some of it might be right, say, oh, that's nice, I get that, and I'm going to look at other sources to substantiate it and back it up. Some of this is nonsense. And you know, think about the confidence that gives a student to question the output and say, wait a minute, I see that that's wrong. I know that that's made up. That surely is a huge strength to then take into the studies and the learning, but also to take into to the world when they go out into work. So they've not got old fogies like me saying, you know, blah, 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 and they go, wait a minute, pa, that I don't agree with that. Where are you getting that from? What's your underlying principles? What are you thinking about saying that? And that's got to be good, because we then move away from the computer said yes, it must be true, and it's not. That sounded like I was on a soapbox here.
Patches the way good answer. Just had a response, John, to your previous point that the point about culture is spot on. The biggest challenge I have encountered so far is managing the change and readiness for what AI will disrupt. Any tips for managing this change across workplace cultures?
Well, I'm always aware of the fact that, you know, my background is in computing, so I am probably not the most sympathetic, I try to be, not the most sympathetic to naysayers. However, having said all of that, it's about moving at a pace that everybody is comfortable with and they're happy to, you know, get involved in. Otherwise, it's just going to fail.
Because when all's said and done, this is a technology change that actually needs a cultural change to facilitate it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and you know, it's as a principal, as a chief exec of an organisation, it's important that I role model across the organisation how we can do that and how we can embed it into the culture in a way that brings everybody, brings the whole organisation forwards.
Okay, and I believe, on a positive note, that brings us almost to time. Yes, it does, I'm right. So I'd like to thank the panel for taking part, and I hope you found that useful.